Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Osayem nu chela cha. That's my attempt at Lekwungen. So if no one understood me, it's okay. I'm trying. I'd like to start the meeting of the Committee of the Whole this evening with the acknowledgement that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen-speaking people, known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and that their historic connections to these lands continue to this day. All right, so as you can see, I have the pleasure of chairing this evening as acting mayor for the first 3 months of the year. It's a wonderful opportunity for all of us to get practice at chairing meetings, sometimes difficult meetings. Let's hope this isn't one of those. Challenging, that's a good word. I heard somebody say challenging, I like that better. So we have a full agenda this evening without, I'm sure you're all aware, and several residents are in attendance. So our procedure bylaw does have a time limit of 10:30 p.m. and I will try very hard to adhere to that. So we'll try to keep things moving along. And so I'm just going to say from the outset that we'd like to hear from as many people as possible, and I'd encourage all speakers to keep their comments brief if possible. And if you've sent a, sorry, Eric, just one moment. If you've sent in a letter, we have received it and read it, and so just keep that in mind when you want to speak. Yes.
Oh, thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Zelka.
Rise on a point of procedure. Just wanted to offer a motion regarding the agenda, which is to move that item 10 be brought forward, since it appears to me that most people in attendance are here relating to item number 10. And I call upon my councillors to hopefully support that. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. Would you like to motivate?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I just see the bulk of the people here, and I don't want to waste as little time as possible in the crowd, in the group, and I feel it would be most appropriate to bring it forward. Thank you.
Given that I think we have Director Herman and Chair Holding in front of us, I think that it would be appropriate to stick to the agenda item as planned, number 1. We could rearrange the building and planning items, but I also think that those are very quick items from the outset. One never knows. I've probably just jinxed us, but I do think that we will get to this fairly quickly. So I think we can stick with the agenda that's been provided by staff, but was there anyone else that wanted to speak?
I guess the other point, I do appreciate the sentiment from Councillor Zelka, but the other thing is I do know several people who aren't here now anticipating that it was going to be item number 10, so they've delayed their appearance here. So I do take your point, but I do wonder about the people who haven't shown up right at this point.
All right. Any other speakers? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That motion fails. All right, so we'll stick to the agenda as outlined. Starting with the Parks, Recreation, and Culture items, we have here, as I mentioned, Director Herman and Monty Holding, who's our commission chair. There are the minutes and reports from November and December on the agenda. Did you want to give us a brief overview, Director Herman?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. The December, you have 2 sets of minutes in front of you, the December meeting and the January meeting of the Commission. The December meeting, as is custom, was quite short, given that there's a Commission social that happens every December after the meeting. The one one item there that was maybe out of the ordinary, in the public participation portion of the meeting, there were 3 speakers, as outlined in the minutes, that came to speak about their concerns around bicycle security, and I think one of those speakers had been to the November meeting as well, and came to the January meeting as well. So I think that's all I would have to say with respect to the December minutes. As for January, As again is custom, we had elections for the chair and the vice chair for 2018, and Mr. Holding was again elected the chair, and Darlene Darien was elected the vice chair. Again, there was some public participation that took place. The first individual lives close to Municipal Hall and spoke to the green space behind Municipal Hall, and would like to see that some work done to make that more welcoming to the neighbors. And then there was again a delegation to speak to bicycle security or public participation. And then we did have a delegation. The Arts Laureate came to give her annual report to the commission and spoke about some of the successes that she had in 2017 and some of her plans for 2018. And she did mention a couple of things that are further on our agenda that you have reports in front of you. And then it was just regular business beyond that.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council, or sorry, committee? Councillor Murdoch?
Just a quick question through you, Chair. I'm curious about the bicycle thing. Have we done, the NLC is largely used in the evenings for our activities. Have we ever done any usage checks on bike parking in the evenings?
Through the chair, yes, not documented to any degree, but certainly since those folks have come to speak to the commission, I've gone by there in evenings on the weekends, and now of course the time of year might have a bearing on this, but there's been lots of room for bike parking. I drove by there on my way tonight, and there are 2 bikes under there, and there's soccer being played on the field, and there's use of the NLC space. So I think the concern of that area not accommodating enough bikes is largely a school day issue. I can pass along as well that I did finally today speak with the principal of the high school, who indicated that she has a work order request in to install more bike racks around the school grounds, and that once she has a date confirmed from school district staff, she will be reaching out to some of those folks who have expressed concern to get their input as to where those bike racks should be placed, ideally.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Croft?
Through you, Chair. I was pleased to see the maintenance report, particularly with respect to the ammonia exposure plan. Has that been approved yet?
To the chair, that is something that's being done in conjunction with the WorkSafe representative, who's been on site to visit, and we are working through a number of requests that she made of us, and now work is being done by the maintenance coordinator in conjunction, I think, in partnership with the fire department. It sounded to me from all reports that we largely have the plans in place that WorkSafe was looking for. It's just a matter of where there are copies that are additional copies, and just sort of some internal communication channels and things like that. But there was nothing overly onerous. It was a 4.5-hour meeting, after which the WorkSafe representative said that we were doing pretty good because her meetings with other departments are averaging 7.5 hours.
Thank you.
I'll move the recommendation to adopt the minutes from December 6th and January 3rd.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? I just wanted to add my comments that I'm very pleased to hear that you've met with the principal, and that secure bike parking issue is being addressed. And I know how concerned many parents are, and I think that's great that we're doing what we can to facilitate that, given that it's not necessarily our patrons at the NLC, but we're doing what we can to help. That's great. Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. Great. Thanks very much for coming, guys. Oh, you guys are here to do the next 2, right? Huh. So the next 2 items are also culture related. So we have a report from Director Herman regarding the public art Bodie the Frog, or Bodie Frog. just Bodie Frog. And I know that Teresa Price from the Public Arts Advisory Committee is also here to answer any questions if anybody should have some. So did you want to tell us the good news?
Sure. As I think the report is pretty straightforward, but we have 2 Oak Bay residents that have indicated a willingness to purchase. I think they may have already purchased that piece of art, the Bodie Frog that is down on the Esplanade, and donate it back to the municipality. So this would be done at very limited cost to the municipality. Some additional engineering work to install it as a permanent piece would need to be done, but it can be accommodated within the current budget. So the recommendation before you is that council accept the donation.
I'll move the recommendation.
Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That's fantastic. And the third item, which is the purchase of public art, The Hunt, which I'm sure many people are aware of. It's down near the marina, and it's been there since 2016. And every time I walk by, I'm alarmed because I'm sure there is a pack of wolves charging along beside us. It's amazing. Anyways, Director Herman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Hunt is I think become a well-known piece of art in the municipality. It in the 2016 Arts Alive program, it received the second highest number of votes, and shortly after that, the word was put out, and council agreed to leave that artwork in place as the Arts Laureate endeavored to raise funds through the community to purchase it and make it a permanent fixture in Oak Bay. And the response has been obviously significant, and to the point where the amount of money required to purchase that piece has now been fully donated. So again, no cost to the municipality for purchase, and the recommendation is to approve the purchase through the Public Art Fund to permanently have the Hunt in Oak Bay.
Move approval of the purchase.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Question to the director. Could
Councillor
you
Nay?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Director Herman. How was the province, congratulations on this, and to the committee as well. A terrific piece of community work. But how was it that the province funded the 10,000 for it? How did that come about?
Through the chair, the Arts Laureate was the person who managed to obtain that grant. I believe she became aware through some discussions that there was a grant opportunity, and I knew the details of that a little better a while back, but I'd have to chat with her again to properly answer your question.
Okay, terrifically opportunistic. Well done.
Are there any other questions? Mayor Nils? Sorry, Mayor Jensen. That's his Twitter handle, Mayor Nils, so.
I go by either, including your Nilsness. Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted just to comment and show my personal gratitude and the gratitude of the community to our Arts Laureate. I mean, ever since she started this program about 4 or 5 years ago, it's just been amazing how really vibrant our community has become with all this public art. And thank the committee that she works with for all the great work they do. And in particular, in this case here, really thank the donors. I've signed a number of letters over the last couple of weeks thanking the donors, and there's been a really great response. And, you know, we've now, I think, succeeded on becoming the arts capital of the capital. So it is important, I think, in terms of our surroundings, because this kind of lifts the spirit, all of these wonderful pieces of art throughout our community. So thank you for all involved.
Great. Oh, spontaneous applause. That's wonderful. Okay, thank you. And we have, did I call the question already? I think no. I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you so much. It's great news. Thanks for coming. All right, moving along to the next portion of the meeting, which is engineering services items. We have two requests. The first one, a change request for limited time parking at 1280 Newport Avenue. And our Director of Engineering Services, Dan Horan, is here to answer questions. And if you would introduce the report, that'd be fantastic.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In the district, the streets and traffic bylaw and the procedure that flows from it splits traffic control orders into two categories: the kinds that Director of Engineering Services has the authority to make changes to, and then a group that are where the authority rests with Council to make those changes. And timed parking is one that rests with Council. So the Strata Corporation at 1280 Newport Avenue submitted a request to staff asking to change 4 parking spaces adjacent to their building to 3-hour timed parking. Staff investigated the area, looked at the traffic patterns, and made a recommendation, which is in the report, which is to change the one unregulated spot to 2-hour parking, and no further changes recommended.
Thank you, Director Horan. Are there any questions from the committee for Mr. Horan or staff? No? Okay. Are there any, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? All right. And is the applicant here this evening? No. Okay.
Move the recommendation.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. All right, the next item, number 5, is a request for a second driveway at 2067 Crescent Road. Okay, do we have, do you want to introduce that as well, Mr. Horan?
Absolutely, Chair. The driveway access bylaw here in Oak Bay sets parameters for driveway access for various geometries and situations. In this case, at 2067 Crescent, there would normally be allowed one driveway access, but there are some parameters where Council has the authority to make exceptions based on a number of criteria, some of them being shortfall in the number of spaces required under the parking facilities bylaw, or where a second driveway would provide safe access on and off of the property. In this case, staff, there's some flexibility here in this particular situation for Council to allow the situation as described in the report, and so staff has recommended the second driveway be approved.
Thank you. Okay, are there any questions for staff from committee? All right, is the applicant in attendance? Welcome. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? See, we have, I think, 3 items of correspondence, all in support. No.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, you may.
I'd move the staff recommendation, and the reason is there's meets the design standards. It's visually consistent with the street. The hard surface is at 20.7%, less than the 25% maximum, and it will provide safe access for elderly people.
Great, thank you, and seconded. Is there any other further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Good luck. The remainder of your project. You didn't expect to have quite that audience, I bet. Yeah. It's a very exciting parking pad. Okay, so the next section is the land use applications. We're getting closer to the main event. Item number 6, which is an architectural siting and design application for 2391 Lansdowne Road. We have a report from the Acting Director of Building and Planning, Ms. Jensen. And would you like to give a brief overview or introduction to that item?
Certainly. This application is for siting and design approval to construct a new single-family home as a result of a 2-lot subdivision approved in November of 2017. It is immediately adjacent but is not in the Uplands area. The advisory design panel reviewed the application at their January 2nd meeting and were generally supportive of the proposed development. They specifically noted how the urban farmhouse design fits with the neighborhood and provided some recommendations for windows at the front of the home and modifying the roof structure over the rear patio. The applicant has subsequently included those recommendations in the design. Staff have also reviewed the application and suggest the amendments will not negatively impact neighborhood character or streetscape. This is a neighborhood with a mix of architectural styles and many mature trees, both on the lots and on the golf course across from the property. Staff are requesting council direction as to the options outlined in the report.
Thank you, Director Jensen. Is there any questions from committee for staff? Okay, is the applicant in attendance? Hi, they are. Are there any questions for the applicant from committee? Okay, I would entertain, is there any comment from the public regarding this application?
I'd move the staff recommendation.
Okay, any further comments? Call a question, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that will be included for adoption on the minutes at the Committee of the Whole meeting on January 22nd. Committee of the Whole, Council, right? No.
The Committee of the Whole
minutes,
minutes,
right,
Chair.
okay,
will be.
at the council meeting, I got it, okay. All right, the next item is number 7, a development variance permit application for Uplands siting and design at 3245 Beach Drive. Councillor Jensen. Oh, that was close. Just made you very political all of a sudden. Director Jensen, if you could give us an overview of that.
So this application is for joint consideration of a development variance permit and Uplands siting and design approval, where the applicant proposes to construct an addition to the rear of the existing garage for additional storage. The existing garage already encroaches into the side yard setback, and the addition will be slightly closer to the lot line than the existing garage. And that is due to the angle of construction of the garage, which is not quite parallel with the side lot line. So by running the addition in a straight line with the current building, the addition moves closer to the lot line. To address both sections of the building, so the existing and proposed, would involve 2 variances. One for 3.2 meters to the side lot line for the existing garage, and one for 3.19 meters for the addition. The application was reviewed by the advisory design panel at both their October 3rd and January 2nd meetings. The panel recommended design revisions that would be more consistent with the design of the house, including siding materials, window patterns, and sconce lighting. Those recommendations have been incorporated into the design. Staff have reviewed the application with respect to the characteristics of the site, and the proposed layout will bring the building closer to a birch tree, but with careful pruning should have no impact on the tree. And given the existing landscaping and sighting from the street, the work will not be visible from the street and will continue to allow for views through to the ocean. Staff are requesting council direction.
Thank you, Director Jensen. All right, so are there any questions from committee for staff? Do you have a question or a comment?
It's not a question, it's just I was on the Uplands tour today, and there is a house that's just fairly close, but the nature of the windows in that house to the south, if I have my directions correct, there were small windows and high in the room, so really at least from the yard where I observed it, didn't look like there was going to be any impact on the immediate neighbors. And I also observed a whole bunch of outdoor bike storage, and presumably that's what this area is going to be from, but it won't be for cars by the looks of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant in attendance? Okay, welcome. Is there any one from the public who'd like to speak to this application? Okay, please come forward. Make sure that you write your name down on the sheet provided there so we get the correct spelling. Although we know who you are, James. But
James Sultanum, 1009 Monterey Avenue. I just have 3 yes or no questions.
Does the homeowner intend to use the accessory building for purposes other than a garage and storage? That's my first question. It's just a yes or no. Number two, will the new addition include rough-in plumbing and wiring for a bathroom and a kitchen? That's just a yes or no question. And does the building and planning department require homeowners requesting such variances, enclosure, additions to accessory building to sign a declaration that they will not use the building as a secondary accommodation or for any other purposes other than the one authorized? Just yes or no question.
There is a small washroom proposed for the addition, but it is being used for storage. There is no kitchen being provided, and no, we do not require that statement to be signed.
Okay, but there is a bathroom?
Two-piece bathroom, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further comments or questions from the public? Councillor Murdoch?
Thank you, through Chair. Just a question. I guess the only concern really on this kind of side yard, there's no windows looking or anything. So is there any issues with, say, drainage or anything onto the neighboring property from this, or is this all hooked up to the storm drain system?
They will be required to put in perimeter drains, so it will be hooked up.
Thank you.
Are there any other further questions from committee? All right, I entertain a motion.
With the recommendation.
Seconded.
Is there any other further comment or questions? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. All right, the next item, number 8, is a development variance permit application, an Uplands siting and design for 3065 Uplands Road. And Ms. Jensen, if you could give us an overview, that'd be great.
Similar to the last one, this application is for joint consideration of a development variance permit and upland siting and design approval. The applicant proposes to convert the existing carport into a detached garage with no change to the building footprint. They'll use the current concrete foundation. The existing carport, however, already encroaches into the front yard setback, so the work requires a variance from the front lot line. The required setback as it stands is 10.66 meters. The applicant is requesting a 0.48 meter variance to 10.18 meters. The application was reviewed by the advisory design panel at their December 5th meeting. They made some suggestions to improve the weatherability of the construction, but overall supported the proposal. Staff reviewed the application with respect to the characteristics of the site. The proposed construction is barely visible from the street as it is heavily surrounded by vegetation. No windows will be facing the street, and a wall will now face the adjacent neighbor in place of the open carport. Staff are requesting council direction.
Thank you, Ms. Jensen. Are there any, Mayor Jensen?
This was the other one that we attended today, and certainly when I arrived at the site, I couldn't see the carport from the street. So it's really all behind significant vegetation. The next door neighbor to the north might have has a slight view of from the house of the kind of a corner, the back corner of the carport, and will have a similar view of the garage. I don't think that's changed. And in fact, it faces their garage. And if anything, I mean, I guess it's a question of aesthetics, but if anything, it'll look better with the new one rather than there's some lattice work and openness in it now. So this certainly will look more sophisticated, complete, and better visual, I think. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. Okay, is the applicant here this evening? Welcome. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? Okay, if there's no further comments from council or committee, I would entertain a motion.
Move the staff recommendation. Yeah.
I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. We're on our way. Good luck. with your garage. Okay, so the next item is number 9 at, it's a zoning amendment for 697 St. Patrick Street. So, this which is down in the corner across from Casey's Market, what used to be Casey's Market. Ms. Jensen, if you could give us an overview of this application.
Certainly. So this is a zoning amendment application to allow for service business use on the site. The proposal would result in a text amendment to the C1 zone of the zoning bylaw. It would add service business use to that zone, but would not change the current zoning designation, the C1, on the property. The central stores building on that site was constructed in 1946. The applicants are not proposing any significant modifications to the building, but are requesting the opportunity to allow for other additional uses to occupy the building. The property is zoned for local commercial and designated corner commercial through the official community plan. That designation would support additional uses on the property than what is currently allowed, with the intent of providing uses to support local residents and act as local gathering places. There are multiple nodes across the community that act as these local commercial areas, but this site is the only one remaining with the C1 zoning in place. More common is the C2 zone that allows for service business use. The Advisory Planning Commission reviewed this application on December 5th and indicated that the request was reasonable and supported the application, but they did have concerns about parking should the building be used for an activity that requires additional parking space. A parking study that was provided with the application indicated that only one additional vehicle would result from the addition of that service business use. Staff have reviewed the application and note that with the text amendment to the C1 zone, while it adds service business use, it does prohibit the site from accommodating other uses that are permitted in other commercial zones, and are requesting council direction as to the options.
Thank you very much. Okay, are there any questions from staff, or sorry, questions from committee to staff? Councillor Murdoch?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So just I had questions about this service amendment, service use amendment. Just curious. I mean, I support this change. It makes a lot of sense for that site, but I'm curious, like if that site is redeveloped, does zoning amendment change stay with that site? So if it was say redeveloped into a multi-story site or something like that, does that same zoning stay, or if there was additional stories put on, would it entice a new rezoning as well?
If they were proposing to do something more than what they're asking for in this particular application, it would now have to meet the zone with the service business use attached to it. If they wanted to do something more than that, they would be looking at another rezoning.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other further questions or comments from committee? Is there anyone from is the applicant here? Okay, welcome. Is anyone from the public here to speak to this item? Please come on up.
James Suttonham again, Southwark Bay. I guess it's a little bit of, through you, Chair, I guess it's a little bit of a follow-up on Councillor Murdoch's question. This use service business, is it defined anywhere? Does it come with any condition? Because it seems to me that it's quite broad and it's attached to the site. What if at one point the architecture's business is no longer there? What really happens? And for example, I'm just going to give an example. Would it be possible, for example, that someone decides to open, for example, a pawn shop, or, and I'm going to be very radical right now, a massage parlor? How would it turn out? Because if I have a very broad use without conditions, would it be possible?
Director Jensen?
Depending on what was proposed for the site, it would have to meet the requirements of the zone. So right now, the permitted use on the property speaks to retail. It's very specific about the retail that it would allow. The service business use, there is a definition in the zoning bylaw as to what service business would entail. And it talks about personal services to persons or their possessions or office use. There are some restrictions on that, such as not allowing a financial institution, for example. So they would still have to meet the requirements of the zone as is set out in that definition.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other further comments or questions from the public? Okay, I would
Recommendation?
Second?
moved and seconded. Further discussion, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. Question for staff. I just wanted to confirm my curiosity has been piqued with the last comment from the public. Just this new C1 zoning, just want to confirm that it would not allow marijuana retail sale.
As the bylaw definitions stand now, no, it would not.
Okay, seeing no other comments or questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Carries. Motion carries. So, moving along to item number 10. See how quickly that went? We have the Oak Bay United Church Affordable Housing Proposed Development at 2095 Granite Street. And I'm just going to just remind everybody that this isn't actually the planning application for this proposal. And this is simply a question, not simple, but it's a more question regarding an alternate process for nonprofit versus for-profit building development applications. So we're going to try and stay to that topic as much as possible. I believe we have a presentation coming from a representative of the United Church. Is Kim Fowler in attendance? Should I ask if there's anybody? Is there any other representatives from the church here this evening that was here to speak to this item? Okay.
I move, if,
All right.
move a deferral.
Okay, I was just going to ask that our acting director of planning and building, Deborah Jansen, give us an introduction to this item.
Very briefly, the district received correspondence from the Oak Bay United Church indicating they are exploring the possibility of constructing affordable housing on the property and requesting council consideration of the proposal as a pilot project. It is staff's understanding that the church has been undertaking public engagement to help determine what that proposal may look like. To date, no land use application has been received by the district.
All right. So without any further information, it makes it a little more challenging to address this item. But if committee is prepared to discuss it, we can do that, or we could defer it to another meeting. Maybe we'll have a.
Madam Chair, I think that thanks to the committee for their very judicious comments. This item may have moved a little bit quicker than perhaps the applicant was anticipating. So perhaps it would be possible to give a brief recess, just to see if there's an opportunity for them to attend.
Okay, everybody calm down. We're just going to make a quick decision up here about whether or not we can hold off for a few minutes. Given that everybody's taken the time to come out tonight and waited through the entire meeting already, I think it would be unfortunate to just to move through this without allowing them to bring that information forward. If they're going to want to present it, it would be good time to when everybody's here. Otherwise, we will have to postpone it to another. Could we not yell from the back? It doesn't help for trying to chair a meeting. It's really challenging when people yell from the back. If you'd like to speak, you can come forward in a moment. But we need to have this discussion here. Thank you for your comments, sir. We'll just try and keep the discussion here at the committee, okay, for just until we make a decision. All right. So, what do you guys think? Should we give a brief recess and see if we can wait for the applicant to arrive, or should we take the suggestion from the member? Is Councillor Murdoch?
I might just make a suggestion. Do we have contact information for Ms. Fowles that we could reach out to her to do this? Okay, Deborah does this. Unfortunately, I was going to ask Deborah or Ms. Russia Jensen to give us some information, but I'll let her walk out. I think it's worthwhile for us to wait a couple of minutes for this. I think we should have the discussion. Certainly, there's a lack of clarity in terms of what they're even asking for, and so we can maybe just deal with this quickly and have it dealt with tonight and not have it dragging out for another month, which is our other option. So that'd be my preference, that we just we wait a few minutes here and see if we can get a hold of the applicant.
I would concur with that.
Do we have a seconder then? So that's a seconder from, and so any other further comments? I can make it, it's my prerogative to make a decision. All right, well, I think we can just have a brief recess because I don't want to see this come back again for 5 minutes. We'll just give everybody just hold tight for 5 minutes, talk amongst yourselves, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. right. If everybody could take a seat again, we're going to resume the meeting. If everybody could return to their seats, we're going to start again. Okay. Yeah, we're going to get started. Yeah. Can you do a sound check? Can you just see if I'm Can people hear me back there? Can you guys hear me at the back? We're trying to get started again. All right. So we were unable to contact the applicant. So I would entertain a motion to table this item to the February 19th Committee of the Whole. They may not wish to carry on with this application. We're not sure why there's somebody isn't in attendance this evening. There may be some extenuating circumstances, we don't know, but at this point I would suggest a tabling motion is the best course of action. Councillor Murdoch and then Councillor Braithwaite.
Before we do a tabling motion, I'm just wondering if we could ask staff if, their understanding of what the request is, because the letter provided to us was not clear. I was looking forward to the presentation tonight to get a sense of what it was specifically that they were asking for. So I'm wondering if we might have the best sense we can before we make any decisions about how to handle this.
It's my understanding that isn't clear, and that's why we were waiting for the presentation, but I will defer to Director Jensen if she wants to explain that further.
No, staff have no more information than what was provided in the correspondence.
Okay,
Councillor Braithwaite?
No, sorry.
Oh,
The second part to my double-barrel question here, and this is for staff, probably Ms. Jones. I'll switch, just having a discussion. So my question was just, if we don't table it, if we have a discussion here tonight, based on what appears to be the understanding, which is the development of a special process for this application, if that's something, if we can have a determination of that and make a decision, and then move forward. If the applicant, if that's not the right interpretation, if they can come back again and reopen the application.
Ms. Koning?
So I'm not sure, Councillor Murdoch, that staff knows enough about what the request is from, I think staff was as eager to hear the presentation, so it'd be difficult for us to provide any kind of guidance to council or give anything other than what you've already got in the report from staff.
The applicant may have just arrived. Okay, so the applicant is here, so we will address this issue this evening. All right. So we had the overview from our Director of Planning. Are there any questions from committee to staff? Not yet? Okay, well, we'll wait for the applicant to come and provide the presentation.
I'll ask it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have through you, Chair, to Ms. Jensen. Is there any precedence for this kind of an approach, delineating nonprofits from profit organizations?
Can you speak directly into your mic? No, not close enough. It's really hard to hear you.
Okay, my question was, are there any precedents in our community or any other community that separates process for nonprofit organizations for profit organizations. If that is the request that's been made before us, I'm just following up on your comments.
I'm not sure that we're ready to answer any of the questions because we haven't asked staff whether or not we should investigate this. We haven't they haven't even looked into it yet. So I'm not sure they're ready to answer those questions.
Okay.
But I think we need to hear from the representative. Welcome. You are Kim Fowler?
Yes,
Hi,
I am.
welcome.
And I'm sorry for the delay. I was stuck. Anyway, there was car issues. Sorry.
That's all right. If you could just pull the mic a little bit closer so that everybody can hear you, because I know it's very hard to hear out in the hallway.
Out in the hallway? Okay.
Yeah, so if you speak directly into the mic, everybody will be able to hear. Thanks.
Okay. So my name is Kim Fowler. I am a full member of the Canadian Institute of Planners, and I am the planner for the Oak Bay United Church Affordable Housing Project. And at a November 29th meeting between representatives of the Oak Bay United Church Development Team, BC Housing, and District of Oak Bay staff, the United Church, we requested that the District of Oak Bay consider a pilot project for our application, given the unique nature of a nonprofit society proposing to construct affordable housing on its property. At present, the District of Oak Bay does not have a dedicated rezoning and development approval process for affordable rental housing, and I know you're making the difference between profit or nonprofit, but nothing that streamlines a process and helps preserve financial viability, and in this instance keeps the density as low as possible, because we are working on a break-even, minimum break-even. We're not here to make a profit. And so delays in the process cost a significant amount of money, and that would have to be recouped in increasing the density. The district staff in that meeting asked the Oak Bay United Church to put the request in writing, which was done on December 10th. The Oak Bay United Church is asking for support of council and staff to discuss the creation of a pilot project, as I mentioned, for development applications for community-based affordable housing projects. Please note this is not a request for council to enable or about pros and cons of development applications. We're not even at that stage yet. It's simply a pilot project for the development application process. And it's not an approval of any policy, and I said out of the discussion, we haven't even submitted an application process, or an application to put into the process yet. Several other municipalities in the Capital Regional District and the province in Canada have or are in the process of considering a dedicated process for affordable rental housing projects, including Kamloops, which has had one for a number of years. Victoria, it has both an ad hoc process and an official process. Vancouver has a process and is in review of those. Saskatoon has had one for a number of years. And Toronto is, anyway, been a lot in the paper lately about how it's reviewing its process. And the Vancouver housing market, which includes Victoria in a worldwide scale, has been ranked last year as the third most unaffordable area in the world for housing. And the occupancy rate is 0.6% in this region for rental housing. Anything below 2% is considered a crisis shortage. So, and we said the district's OCP, the new one, strongly supports the creation of more affordable housing, including on institutional designated land, which includes the church. And I can go through and provide a whole bunch of information from your official community plan, but for the purposes of tonight, I won't do that. But if you need that information, I'm more than happy to provide that. But it simply says that there is a need for affordable housing in Oak Bay, within the region, and the process that we're proposing is to provide affordable rental housing, and we would like to be considered respectfully as a pilot project to discuss that. There are different approaches across Canada within those. I don't want to bound those in any way with a conversation with staff. I would respectfully allow the conversation and find out what the district staff have a conversation to find out what those positions and opportunities are. I didn't want to provide anything specifically to say this or that. We can bring the best management practices examples and then have a conversation, but that's basically the request, is to have the pilot project for the development application process. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Fowler. Are there questions from committee? Councillor Murdoch, Councillor Ney?
Thank you, Chair. I guess the big question I have is I'm not entirely clear on what's being asked for here. We have, for our development applications, essentially a first in, first out model of queuing. So if an application comes in, once it's completed, it goes through and it's an iterative process before it comes to council for consideration. Is the request here to look at jumping that queue essentially, or moving up in that queue to get in that technical evaluation process, or is it something else entirely than this that you're looking for in this process?
Through the chair to Councillor Murdoch, I said I didn't want to bound. There might be opportunities. There are examples of front of the line service, it's called. Those are used by some municipalities. If there is a significant delay of development applications in a municipality, I don't know what your circumstance is here specifically. There are also, more commonly, actually, there's a concierge provided, which is a dedicated staff person. One of the biggest complaints of development applicants, particularly ones who are nonprofit societies who are not developers, they have to follow their application around to engineering and then take it over to planning and then take it over to parks and then take it over to business licensing, then take it, and it gets very complex. So oftentimes there's a dedicated staff person, and I know in particular there's a couple of examples across Canada where that's worked very well. So those are two examples that I can say that from other places that have worked.
Okay, thank you. I mean, we have a very small staff here, so there's not much chance of a dedicated person attached to something like that. I guess the question that I would have to you, and then to probably put this to staff, is it seems to me that to do a draft policy or a pilot project, we would need a draft policy of some sort, essentially, something that we would try out. We'd come up with sort of what we would consider best practice for our small community and the small number of these applications we have, and then look at possibly implementing that as a pilot. But I guess my concern would be the time to develop that policy is probably going to take longer than this application may come up. Just with the small number of staff, we're not only very busy with applications, but we're actually quite short-staffed at this point as well, of senior staff in the building and planning department.
Councillor Ney?
My question was along the same lines, but I still have questions. I really wanted to get more information about what it means to streamline this application and what exactly that would mean. It's along the lines of what Councillor Murdoch's asking. Because I do know one thing. I mean, maybe I should just let you answer that, and then I can speak to what some of the concerns that I've heard may be.
And again, through the chair to Councillor Ney, there's a variety of approaches, some of which I've mentioned, which may or may not apply within the District of Oak Bay. Your staff who are experienced in doing development may have other suggestions, and that's what I said. I didn't want to come out and say, this is what we're asking for, because I want to have the benefit of the conversation to do that. But it provides for, yes, there is sometimes timing benefits or expertise benefits, or simply some of the technical issues, regulatory issues, whether those are parking standards or tree preservation, or all of the studies that are required as part of a normal development application process are oftentimes very overwhelming for nonprofit organizations. So those are some, and those simply I offer as examples that may come in the process. We don't know whether, and I said I could ask, I said, is there a backlog in development applications? So is it even a consideration? And while I'm aware you do have a small staff and you have, and you may be short-staffed, I understand as well, is providing the staff assistance helps the staff as much as it helps the applicant in many cases. Having been in many development application review processes and implemented them, it helps both the municipality as well as the applicant because there's not any wasted time. There's one person who knows what's going on with the application and can address issues, and it gets processed much more effectively, which is both time as well as addressing the outstanding issues.
I mean, I'm kind of hearing it's a lot of technical support to just move from one piece of the project to another.
Yeah.
I do know one of the things that, I mean, it's obvious that the beginning of this project has elicited a lot of community interest, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that would concern our community is that the amount of time for making decisions, the amount of time for consulting, thoroughly with the community, that those parts of the project are not compromised. I mean, could you speak to that?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Ney, there isn't a compromise in the consultation process. That's something that is separate. And as I said, we don't even have a development application process, and we've already started community engagement. So that isn't part of the process.
What kind of to make this feasible, I appreciate this is a not-for-profit kind of project, what kind of a time frame are you looking at to make this work and keep within budget and the scale of the project that you have in mind here?
I don't, as I said, have any particular expectation. That's part of the conversation I wanted to have. I don't know how long applications take here. I heard one that was recently was a 3-year long process. That is an exceptionally long period of time for rezonings. 2 years is quite an exceptionally long process as well. So, and that's simply a comparative analysis. But that's part of the conversation. And it said I can, I can guess or give you my opinion, but I want to have we want to simply have council's permission to talk to staff about that and find out what those issues are and what the opportunities are. But again, it is not to compromise a consultation process. It is, as you had mentioned, some of the technical issues regarding it and making sure that they get addressed, which is part of the consultation process.
Okay, and just one more question through you, Chair. Just to make sure I understood this part, what you're saying, this has to do with to keep the costs down, because as I understood what you were saying is the longer the development process, the more the costs go up, and when the costs go up, then the cost of the housing goes up for the resident, right?
Yeah.
So are there also any other constraints around your funders and timelines around the way you're obtaining your funding that are creating constraints for you?
Through the chair to Councillor Ney, there are, BC Housing has given project approval, not funding approval, but project approval for this. And they have asked us to deal with this as expeditiously as possible because their mandate is to provide housing in the province. And there's a very strong need for it, particularly in this region. And so we have got encouragement from them to look at options like we're suggesting here tonight for a pilot project and any others we can to, as it is said, to be effective as well as being efficient in terms of this type of project.
They're asking for it to be expedited just because there's a need for more housing, not for financing purposes.
It just said they are certainly aware of the financing issues and the costs of delays because of the hundreds of projects that they manage annually. So they are very well aware of that. And in the literature, again, if you take a look at it, that's one of the main issues talked about in affordable housing is that the length of the process does cost a significant amount and affects the affordability of the units.
Thank you.
Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair. I mean, I understand that there is a strong need for housing within our community. I totally understand that. But you said something about the process in Oak Bay seems to take a long time, but I think sometimes it takes a long time to get something correct. And that's what we like to do in Oak Bay, is to try and get it correct. So
I'm just going to remind everybody that as nice as applause is, it can be intimidating to others, and so let's just try to keep
so
the
I
applause
have
to
two
that.
other things through you, Chair, if I may. One, you talked about that it's hard sometimes to follow the process around, like when it's going to Parks and Rec or to here to there. But is that not what your role is to follow that application around? Is that what you're hired for? For the church, for you to follow that application as it goes through each different department?
Through the chair to Councillor Braithwaite, certainly it is on behalf of the applicant. Our development team is to provide assistance. However, it's a two-way street, and we're simply trying to deal with the issues and provide that process. And just from the reviews that have done by other affordable housing projects, that is the cost of it and of the time and the amount of time that it takes, and the cost is a significant issue that has been raised, and why there has been these policies across Canada that have been implemented to try and address it. And it's a development application process are complex, and it's simply a request to try and simplify it, not drop pieces off that are important. It's simply to if there is an ability to simplify it, to make improvements, not only for this application, but for other applications that would be similar. It's simply a request, again, to have a discussion about how that might occur.
Yeah, and I guess I go back to something I think it was Councillor Murdoch talked about the first in, first out. And somebody's singing back there. And I to me, that's kind of how our process has always been. And I'm not sure if to change that might not start a bad precedent for others coming forward. So that's just one thought that I had. But then my last comment would be, and I think it was something in some of the notes that we had sent to us, one of the residents said that they noted that the submission from the church was made to Oak Bay Council on December 10th, and yet it was not mentioned at the community meetings later that week on December 13th and 14th. And so I'm just wondering if that was just an oversight, or whether that was something that was done for whatever reason, and perhaps you can just address that.
That said, the development application process for engaging the near community, near neighbors as we've called it, we've had two sessions, one in November, one set of sessions in November, and one set of sessions in December. I talked with you at least one of those sets, was to ask and initiate some type of dialogue with the community, to ask about the vision and the principles and some of the stuff. We came back then in the second time to talk about and show some options for that. This letter coming out of the December 29th meeting and sending in a letter is to talk about a process, a pilot project, which would be part of the development application process. We're not even at a development application process, so that hasn't been discussed. And if we hadn't received support, because as of December 10th, we didn't have any discussions whether or not we'd even be on the agenda.
I understand that. I'm surprised that you wouldn't have made mention of it at one of the meetings, just to say in passing, we've put this letter forward to the municipality of Oak Bay to see if we could expedite the process. I just think that might have been a friendly thing to do.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Braithwaite. On the other hand, it's being respectful of staff who had a request to deal with, and to leave them to give us a response to do that.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from committee? Councillor Croft?
Thank you, through you, Chair. My question is actually around the additional costs of a delayed process. The church already owns the land. Where is the additional cost? There are fixed costs for architectural fees, there are fixed costs for the team, there's all these fixed costs that already exist that will have to be done no matter how long this project may take, from my experience. So usually in a development, it's the cost of the land and the carrying cost of the land that drives up the costs.
Through the chair to Councillor Croft, yes, those are sometimes some of the costs. In this particular case, there are two costs that are of consideration. One is there is already a mortgage or under a technical legal term, a lien against the property now for the church to use those funds to fund a development application process, which is very expensive. So the longer that is on title, those interest rates go compound. And then the other ones are the escalation in construction costs, which are 6% per month right now. So that's $170,000 a month carrying costs.
Are there any other further comments? First time comments or questions? Okay, Councillor Murdoch.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Fowler, and for some of the information. So what I understand from what you're saying is that the goal here is to expedite the process once the application is in. So the consultation process, the development of the design, that's all going forward, and that's your cost. This is really at the cost once the application is in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough. And I am sympathetic. I think affordable housing and so forth deserves to have some sort of, do what we can to help on these kind of applications. I'm struggling a little bit just with the reality of our situation, that there's anything we can do here, in terms of creating a pilot project or not. I don't think it's necessarily realistic that the application process, once it's in, and perhaps staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially there's a whole series of technical documents that have to be provided that we give a list for. So it's the geotech, it's the traffic study, it's all those sort of pieces that the applicant is responsible for. And once they come in, we're there just to make sure you have them all, but not necessarily to do them for you. So correct. I'm curious about where it is that given the limited amount of staff and the lack of a policy we have right now, that you could be looking for outside of sort of moving up in the queue as opposed to just helping with these aspects. You maybe, given that, just explain to me a little bit about what you might be considering here.
Through the chair to Councillor Murdoch, it is, as has been previously mentioned, very technical issues that occur during a development application process. And so it's not meant to change any of the standards that are there for traffic studies or arborist studies or geotechnical or other environmental studies. Those are requirements. In fact, many of them are statutory within the province, and that's not what we're considering. But I said, when you start reviewing those reports and those issues and the interplay of them, it's a highly technical process and can get bogged down if there is not leadership and addressing a coordination of those technical issues. And I've seen, it varies significantly depending on how well that process is managed. And again, the request that we're asking for is simply an ability with approval of council to discuss those with staff. And I can't answer all the questions you're asking because I don't know the particulars of Oak Bay, and that's why we're asking for the request simply to talk to staff. There may be very little that can be done. There may be some stuff that can be done. The request we're asking is simply the ability to come and have that discussion.
Okay. I'm not entirely okay. Fair enough. I guess the other through you, Chair, if I can continue. I guess if I look at the way complicated applications like this one seem to get really expensive, is where they get to the point where the application is decided upon. It goes through all of those technical pieces, and it's all worked through the process. If that takes 3 months or 9 months, there's a lot of expense incurred there. Obviously, the best way we can save money is to get to a design and so forth. That's going to get the acceptance of council and the community and so forth up front. So, I think the biggest thing here, I guess. So I just want to make sure I was clear. So, if we're looking at the sort of post-application efficiency pieces, I really have a hard time, because it really means us directing staff to start a new project to come up with policies, and then after the policies are made, to kind of see how we can fit this into it. Because there's many aspects that might deserve to have some prioritization in a queuing model. But I do think we have an obligation as council and as a community to make sure that we can facilitate communications and so forth up front, so that the application, when it comes forward, has the best possible chance of success. So I guess that's where I would look at this, and it's not going to get solved tonight, but I certainly would like to see some mechanism. I think the efforts that have been made so far to continue to listen carefully to the community, I would like to see it come back to this table. There was an informal application, not really an application, but an informational piece brought to council when this all started, just sort of informing us that it was happening. And that was very helpful because it brought the awareness up and everybody was aware of it. I think that was very healthy. And I'm wondering, and I guess it's probably too hard to answer this question here tonight, but if there's any possible way we can maybe look at this. So as the process of the thought through design gets firmed up a little bit, so you have something that you're thinking of bringing to staff with all the technical pieces as part of your application, that can come back to this table in a forum like this where there's public input, and we can have a discussion, and council can hear the input. We can talk about it without having to go through all the technical application phases, recognizing we can never approve something in that phase, but it would just be sort of some feedback loop to make sure that when the final design comes, it has the best chance of success. I don't necessarily have a question for you, but it's sort of a comment, and maybe I'll throw that to staff if they feel comfortable, ask if that's even a possibility. It's probably not fair to put them on the spot right now, but I guess if this application is asking for an expedition of the process for the application, I wouldn't support that. I would, however, support a more fulsome model before it gets to that point, before it has to go through all that expensive technical work to make sure that we have the best chance of success coming forward.
Okay, that wasn't a question. That was just a comment. Okay.
Well, I think it's unfair. Thinking about it, it's probably unfair to ask staff to comment on that because that's too vague a comment and down a rabbit hole we don't need to get to.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm looking at this application, the letter right now, I don't think I could support it given the description that's given. I think our primary concern is getting to a design that is acceptable to everybody, and we can work. Staff's always very good about working very, very fast on these things as much as they can within the constraints.
Right. I'm going to, okay, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this issue. And 2 comments and a question. First of all, thank you through the Chair. Thank you so much for your presentation. And I want to say that it's admirable that Oak Bay United Church wishes to be an advocate for affordable housing in Oak Bay. That's something that our official community plan speaks extensively about. So, and your presentation makes reference to that. So I just wanted to sort of congratulate you for that piece. I do want to say that in the spring of 2017, staff brought forward something referred to the Efficiencies and Red Tape Reduction Initiative. It was something that was a staff initiative that council ended up the majority supporting, which I feel may have achieved many of the things you probably are asking for. Many corners were cut. Many speed enhancements were moved forward with respect to developments here in Oak Bay. My worries with respect to that, and possibly with respect to what you're asking for, is that community engagement, community opportunities to speak and have input into the process will be negatively impacted. So I'm leaning, even though there's not a motion on the table, I'm leaning away from any added enhancement or added speed up to the process that's with respect to the fact that it's already been sped up beyond my level of comfort. And the last question I have for you is, or the last point, which is relating to the experience with Oak Bay Lodge. I thought that was a very informative example that Oak Bay United Church might look towards with respect to the experience that VHA had. I understand, and staff will correct me if I'm wrong, that they went through a very expensive process and they came back to council 2 separate times with 2 separate very expensive proposals, and they were rejected on both before they finally walked away from the table. They spent a lot of money coming up with a proposal that we and the community could not support. So my suggestion for you is that if Oak Bay United Church truly wants to speed up the process, find a design with everyone here, outside and beyond the council table, before you come to the council table, a design and a solution that the community can support. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Jensen, I was going to make some comments, but you go ahead.
Thank you very much. It strikes me there are two major issues at play here, given the kind of request. And just before I get into what they are, because this request and this ask lacks details, it's really hard for us to kind of understand what is being suggested here. I think we're not in a position, based on what you've said tonight, and even based on the letter, to give any, in my view, to give support to any change at this point. It is too non-specific. It really doesn't say where in the process we're going to make these changes. The two issues seem to come down to policy on the one hand, and then practicality on the other, and I'll speak to both of them. So the policy is the deeper issue, which do we accept that there is a difference between profit and nonprofit, and of such a nature that nonprofits should either go through a lesser process or should be put at the front of the line, and that's a complex issue because you're trying to weigh the good things that could come from either a profit or good things that come from nonprofit, and similarly the downsides of both of those. So that is a complex issue. The other one is a practical issue. And it strikes me at this point, the practical issue is the showstopper at this point. Because we have a building and planning department, and you can look at Ms. Jensen over there in terms of the planning department. That's 50% of the planning department, to be fair. We run on a very tight personnel budget, and we are very careful over the years to make sure that we don't have excess staff. So obviously there's some in the building inspectors and this type of thing. But really the practical, it strikes me the practicality of the situation is there is just no fat in the system, if I can call it that, to speed this up, or to have the concierge, or to slim it down, and to slim down the process in any way, because our staff are just they're going 110%, and they do a great job. So how could we make how could we accommodate you knowing that? That to me is the showstopper here, and I'm not sure that that council. I think council should, before we start starting looking at this, are we prepared at this point to review this in any depth, given that showstopper? Is there value in us even looking at this? The community's worked up on the substantive issue of the development. Is it worth making more turmoil and difficulty in regards to what the process would look like? And for me, at least tonight, I don't see the value going forward to the next step. So not that I'm trying to cut off all of the speakers who've written us letters of opposition, but if council has no interest at this point, then I think we need to declare it now and declare it early, because we know that there's going to be a lot of controversy on the substantive issues, height and footprint and all of that. That's where I think our efforts and our energies need to be focused. So this to me is a bit of a side issue, which I don't think will help the overall process. So that's what I'm suggesting, that council, I think, give us some preliminary views as to whether or not we even want to go down this rabbit hole, so to speak. And if we don't, let's encourage the church on their end to move the process along so we actually have something that we can discuss and review. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. I guess I'll add my my questions and comments. When this item came forward and I read some of the background materials provided, I have always at the forefront this housing crisis and our responsibility as a community and as a council to do our best at the municipal level to address that. So I was kind of excited about the idea of an alternative plan, and also to send a signal to not just the United Church, but to any other developers, nonprofit or otherwise, that would be willing to provide that kind of housing in this community, because it's really, truly a crisis for many people. And so I was pleased to hear about it, and I think you may have heard already what I also, my second thought was, but how could we hurry things along without meeting all the statutory requirements? Because that's part of what slows applications down. And the other part is that it takes time to consult, and it takes time. Community engagement it takes time, and those statutory requirements include public hearings, committee of the whole meetings, council meetings, and our staff did address some delays we used to have. In the spring, they took away where we would literally have a one-liner on the agenda item, and then it would just be brought forward to the next committee meeting. It just was added to an agenda for almost no purpose. So they've expedited the process by a month. But truly, there's not really a lot of room within this organization, that from what I can see, to speed things up. And we don't have that many applications. We have a lot of applications, mind you. The building department is doing an amazing job with, I think, the 600 plus applications that they currently have on their docket for small variances, for building permits, and all that kind of thing. But we don't get big applications very often, and in my 2 terms, I think there's been 3-4 major developments that have come forward. So it feels like we would be adding more time by adding this process, or adding a pilot project designation where you have to have conversations and come up with process. And I fear that would just add more work to an already well-burdened department. And so as much as I want to send that signal to the rest of the community that we are looking forward to opportunities for affordable housing developments, and I think the majority of the letters we've received have been supportive of the concept of affordable housing. I think that's come through loud and clear, that everybody wants to see more affordable housing provided in Oak Bay. We want to do our part for the region. This might not be the way to speed things up, or the way to make this a better process. And honestly, I think the delays happen in this room. And I mean, we have long meetings, and they're all statutory requirements. They're all part of the process. It's when we have to send you back after a committee of the whole to do revisions, to make changes, that things get truly delayed. And so that's where I hope we can, you can work well with the community and really do some amazing consulting and workshops and whatnot to truly engage with the community, so that when we do come here, you come here with a room packed like this, full of supportive voices. That's what I hope we can achieve. But I don't think this pilot project process is actually going to achieve what you're setting out to do, which is speed things up. I think the best way to do that is truly through community engagement and garnering the support not only of your near neighbors, but the entire community. And I think we all support the goal. So that's one thing on your side already. So those are my comments. Did anybody want to make a motion? Councillor Zelka?
Thank you, Chair. Whereas I like to see no action on this report, I wish to move a motion to receive.
Second.
Just hang on. Okay. Okay, that's just not, certainly, Mayor Jensen?
And just to, so we all understand, it might be some misunderstanding about the process in the audience, at least from that little murmur. Motion to receive essentially is saying we receive the letter, but at this point we're not going to take any further action
Yes.
on it. So it's kind of like, to put it in the vernacular, thanks for the idea, but no thanks, we're not moving forward. And as I mentioned before, I really think we need to start building the debate around what the substantive project is going to be. And for that, we need to see it. And then I think that's when the discussions and certainly the debate around this table will follow, not on, and we shouldn't really be expending energy on changing the process at this point. Thank you.
Okay, so we had a seconder over here. Okay, Councillor Croft was seconder, or Murdoch, sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's essentially it, to keep the status quo. So were there any further comments? Are we going, oh, right. And did anybody from the public want to speak to this issue?
Can I?
Okay.
Can I make one comment?
Yeah.
Just through you, Chair, I think it's probably worth noting that if we're working on expediting things, this is probably a good chance not to have a lot of debate at this point from the public. Certainly welcome people forward, but it's fairly clear at this table that this is essentially this application, and it'll go back to the applicant and the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. All right, make sure to write your name down. Thank you. And introduce yourself.
I'm on. My name's Curtis Hobson. I'm a resident of Oak Bay. I know the decision's kind of already been made, so I'll keep this really short. I just wanted to comment on the correspondence from Cheryl Thomas, who is the head of the property development team. And again, I'm just going to read, even I know everyone here or the council, I hope, has read it, but this is how Ms. Thomas has characterized my neighbors. I trust this helps you understand what is really going on with our project while you're being overwhelmed with misinformation from a small but active group of neighbors who are spreading fear with a lot of rumors, conjecture, misinformation, and outright lies, end quote. So I am not going to respond in kind. When my neighbors have characterized as outright liars, I am not going to rise to that. But I would like to point out a couple of comments, perhaps, that Ms. Thomas has communicated through the church's own correspondence. And I don't know if council is familiar with this. These are the minutes of the congregation meeting of Oak Bay United Church, August 20th, 2017, which were retrieved from the church's website. And we had a meeting with Ms. Slater, who's the Reverend, and Ms. Thomas. There was probably 8 or 9 immediate neighbors, and I think most of them are here tonight. And it was kind of a Q&A, just like neighborhood conversation. And we had some concerns, of course. When changes happen in your neighborhood, you're concerned. And a couple of questions that were asked straight out to Ms. Thomas. We're well aware that the United Church of Canada has made a lot of development applications, land-rich, congregation-poor type of moves. And we know that the BC Presbytery has a property resource team. And we asked Ms. Thomas, how come they're not involved? Like, it would seem that would be the logical thing for the United Church to call on their own property resource team. And the United Church BC Conference, sorry, I'm quoting now from the church's correspondence. The United Church BC Conference Property Resource Team, the PRT, was consulted to see if they would fund a development feasibility study as they had for other congregations. So we asked, how come they're not involved? And Ms. Thomas told us, and I quote, they were far too busy with other applications and property resource issues to assist the Oak Bay United Church. Again, these minutes are from August, and our meeting was in September or October, fall. So the property resource team basically said, and I'm quoting here again from the church correspondence, based on the known information at the time, declined as redevelopment was considered unlikely based on zoning and density. So Ms. Thomas told us they were too busy, but they had actually been consulted and they declined to get involved. So again, I won't call that a lie, but that's what we were told. And we were also told that the team would be starting with a blank piece of paper. So we were under the impression that there was no formal plans, there was no scenarios. They were exploring the idea of affordable housing. And sorry, now I lost my spot here. So we understand that one of the motivating factors for this was the church lacks money to carry on their ministry, to maintain their properties. So they did apply for a loan for $500,000 from BC Housing, and they did get that. And again, we were told there was a blank piece of paper, but when we look at the correspondence from the church, we see that in order to get that loan, they had to basically, and I'll quote here, the rezoning process will ultimately determine what we are permitted to build. Although there is uncertainty in the process, a range of outcomes, including best case scenario, likely outcome, and smallest viable outcome, have all been analyzed using a sophisticated, comprehensive financial model tailored to our specific circumstances. The full range of scenarios were all viable. So I don't know how that translates into a blank piece of paper. So again, we don't have anything. We have a blank piece of paper, but they already had the best case, most likely, and smallest viable outcomes. And those outcomes are actually, those scenarios are actually available. So council, if they were to review those scenarios, they would have a pretty good idea of what's going to come forward. Like Councillor Murdoch said, give us some idea of what you want. The scenarios are available. I believe people that attended the consultation sessions, the last ones, they saw the scenarios. So the smallest scenario was still had a footprint, floor area, of 63,000 square feet, 4 stories, and the smallest one wasn't viable, in the church's own words. So again, council has a pretty good idea what's going to be coming forward, and I just, again, I was a bit upset with Ms. Thomas's letter when she characterized myself and my neighbors as liars. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hobson. Next speaker, if you want to write your name down, please.
I will, yeah.
Thanks.
You know who I am. Okay. Diana Butler, and I'm a neighbor of the church. And like Ms. Fowler, except I'm retired and she's not, I was a full member of the Canadian Institute of Planners, so I understand to some extent anyway parts of the planning process. I want to say that you are quite right, and I'm glad that you have recognized that this neighborhood is not opposed to affordable housing. We have said that right from the beginning, and we are consistent in that statement. We need more diversity of housing in Oak Bay. There's no question about it at all. We need more forms of housing type because once you reach a certain age, perhaps, and don't want to live in your single-family house, there aren't a lot of alternatives except the odd apartment condo. So it would be good to see some variety of housing in this community, and not just in terms of the form of housing, but in the kinds of housing that are more affordable to a wider group of people. So I'm glad you accept that that's what the neighborhood is saying. I just want to talk about one of the reasons that municipalities most often do not establish a separate process for not-for-profits and for-profit developers is because it sets a bad precedent. There are also financial implications for doing that, and that's probably why most municipalities have not done it at least in this region. And because we only heard about what was happening today, last Friday, I haven't had a lot of chance to consult with a number of people and find out what's happening in this region, but I did consult with a couple of very senior planners in Victoria and Saanich. And keep in mind that Victoria has a population, what, of 85,000, Saanich 115,000. They're the largest municipalities in this region. They have large planning departments and other staff as well. They also have some financial resources that I think Oak Bay is lacking. Certainly they have considerable capacity and resources in excess of what Oak Bay has. And yes, Victoria has adopted in recent years a process for expediting not-for-profit, but they also have very detailed land use procedures that have to be followed. In the case of Saanich, I want to quote to you, because I think you've made a really sensible decision, and this quote from this senior planner in Saanich, I think highlights exactly what we're here tonight about. And so she went on to say, other than the general policies in the OCP, we do not have a formal policy process around expedited approvals for affordable housing. In general, we try as best we can with resource limitations and other council priorities to move such files through as quickly as possible. That being said, 2 recent projects, Arrow Road and Townley Street, both ultimately got approved in large part because of enhanced community engagement by the applicants. While the additional engagement lengthened the process considerably, in general, the extra time taken on both of these projects resulted in an improved outcome for most or all parties. And what we're lacking here is a not very adequate consultation process with the local neighborhood. And so I would like you to encourage, as you have tonight, that there be a really good community engagement process and consultation process with the neighborhood and with the wider community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Jensen?
Just a small point of order. When I heard Ms. Butler say that your decision tonight, we haven't quite made it yet. The question hasn't been called, but it might be better if we call it sooner than later, because I think that's fair. And I think
so you haven't made it.
we haven't held the hands up yet part of the all in favor, all against. But I think the sooner we do that, I think the sooner we can put people's concerns at rest and move forward with an actual, with the plans when we see them. Okay? Thank you. So.
All right. See, I just wanted to give the applicant one final chance to respond to any of the comments that were made. She's there. I didn't see her.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in terms, what we clarified at the start was this is a request in terms of an application process, not in terms of the consultation. So I have some concern about all the comments that were made about what has or has not happened, and accusing people of lying is really not appropriate. We have a list of stuff from some of these neighbors who have sent around misinformation, like a 6-story, 250-unit development. We do not have anything, have not, in the time it was handed out, nothing designed. We hadn't even hired an architect at that stage. So I don't want to have a conversation about what has or has not occurred and what has or has not been acceptable in a consultation process. That was not the purpose of tonight's request or the agenda item that we had asked for. It was simply to discuss about the application process that maybe provided some assistance to an affordable rental housing project given the OCP policy that strongly supports it, and in a region that desperately needs affordable housing. And I think we have agreement on that policy level. We can say that on that, and that's a place to start. There will always be disagreements in terms of density and form and character and all of those sorts of things, and that is the purview of the consultation process. But we don't want to, we would prefer not to get in a process. We will be clarifying the process, and as I said, we're at an initial stage. We are just getting the technical issues going. We had an engagement process, asked for input, provided some options, taken those feedback back, and we are working on it. And we are still what we consider at initial stages in a process. But as said, we would like it to keep it respectful and not have to deal with misinformation, but we will be addressing the misinformation that is out there. But we hope to continue the consultation. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
Move adjournment.
Second, okay, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. We are adjourned. Thanks for coming, everyone.